Today I'm going to demonstrate a very special machine. It's from the Edwards Instrument Company, and it's a floor model physician's x-ray machine. And this machine we bought for Andy Wright, who's the great-great-grandson of Edwin Lee Edwards, who's the inventor of the machine. To start off, we'll show the panel on the side of the machine. The input power is a couple of binding posts on the bottom of the cabinet, and it goes up to a main on-off switch. Then there's another knife switch here which controls whether you want the X-ray coils on top or the high frequency coils inside for diathermy or auto condensation. Yeah, you have a rotary switch here that controls the power levels from low to high. You have a 2 series spark gap, which is unusual in that it has hexagonal fins instead of the normal round fins. It appears to be a silver gap. And there's an interesting sliding switch here that controls the frequency, high, medium, or low, and that's specifically for the auto condensation and diathermy sections. So I turn the machine around. Inside the machine, it's really beautiful. It's one of the nicest made machines I've seen. The coils to the left here are the auto condensation and diathermy coils. I'm not quite sure their configuration. It's the first time I've ever seen coils that look like this in a machine. I have a feeling they're flat spirals, but I could be wrong. Maybe like a heavy ribbon in each one. But they're interconnected in strange ways on the top. The output is very similar to normal diathermy and auto condensation. I just think there are some clever coil winding techniques that Edwin come up with. In the middle of the machine you see the adjustable capacitor bank, and this would be for low, medium, or high. Now, over the years, the leads deteriorated a little bit, or the tin on the sides of these, and there's a little bit of arcing while the machine operates, so I won't operate it for very long. There's a very long reactance coil on the side that's used to limit the current to the main supply. It's used for the higher power settings, and there's a couple of smaller magnet coils here that are used for the lowest power setting. Now, it's interesting to see actually 3 coils in a machine. Normally it's just one large coil. The high voltage transformer is in the very back. It's putting out something like maybe 2,000 volts. And the pancake coils are very small. They're on the top of the machine. They're only about 7 inches square, but the output's really impressive from this machine. So they're very well designed. In the bottom of the machine, it's kind of hard to see, but there's a small box which leads to the main power. And this was an interesting safety in the machine. In those days, things typically weren't grounded, but to protect the house wiring, it was common to put a telephone condenser or 2 telephone condensers in series with the actual mains line coming in. And the center point of those was grounded to, say, a water pipe. And on this machine there are 2 binding posts on the bottom on the outside for your main power, hot and neutral, and then there's a separate screw on the bottom that you could actually ground it. And in this example I have a typical 3-wire plug on the machine. But you can see how very neat and orderly the components are. It still looks like new inside, and especially the wood is still even with the original shine. It's remarkable. Originally this was covered up by a piece of wood, which I have over here. I took it off just to be able to see the components. And also you'll see that everything is very heavily rubber coated cloth covered wire. It's almost like an ignition cable going down here to all the components. Very, very neat how this machine was put together. Very nicely done. The latch, which is a little bit tricky on the door, it's actually a push latch. When you push from the outside, it hinges a little pin to the left and right to actually make the catch on the inside. And then small here, but this is the actual Edwards Instrument Company logo from Indianapolis, Indiana. This is number 7647. And there's only a handful of machines still in existence. Most of them are like the Violet Ray type of machines. This is the only X-ray machine we know of. Hopefully some more will turn up somewhere. Edwin, he had a rather tragic incident. One of his machines accidentally electrocuted the dentist that was using it. He'd come in contact with one of the wires, and it traumatized poor Edwin. And at the time, his machine was known more inferior. I mean, the design of it was perfectly fine with other machines at that time period. It didn't represent something unsafe from a commercial point of view, but tragically, it just happened his machine was one of the first to actually cause a fatality. And Edwin sought out to produce a safer dental x-ray after that, and he did, and it looks like he was either one or two or very, very close in developing a system that was completely enclosed that protected the operator from stray wires. Most of the time we hear about dangers of radiation in the early machines and precautions that weren't taken, but there was a very real electrical danger in not so much the high frequency machines as this, but in the typical transformer sets and Coolidge sets. And it's not normally mentioned, but there were many, many fatalities, and it just happened that Edwin's was the one that really caught the news. And it affected him greatly, and he went on to develop a beautiful machine, and one of many that we've never seen. This machine turned up in Kansas City at auction. Leland was the man's name that owned it before. I seen it and instantly said we have to get it for Andy because we might not ever see another one again, though hopefully we will. But this is the machine. The bottom of the machine is it's just an empty cabinet, but originally it would have had, let's say, a motor generator. Many times there was open space at the bottom of machines, just in case people had direct current in their homes only. They could put a motor generator in the bottom of the machine and generate the alternating current to power the transformers and everything else inside. So I made some quick homemade terminals for the top. Check the wiring. I may open the door just to see the components here a little bit. May be able to notice a little bit of arcing around that condenser, but showing it on purpose just to show what happens in these machines. Even though mechanically everything looks pristine, certain metals and certain combinations may deteriorate over time, and particularly tin and lead. Sometimes the fluxes that were used just over time tend to break down. to avoid too much stress on that capacitor, I've gone straight to the high power setting. And you can see a true flaming arc from this coil. Now you could see some of the arcing on that capacitor during those settings. It would be difficult to completely take it apart and resolder it. Not impossible, but given that the machine probably won't be around, it's just going to be kept in the Edwards family from now on. We've decided to keep it original, and we'll take a few high-resolution photos and simply leave it at that. Beautiful piece of history, all intact, and a great example of engineering from that time, and maybe the only example of an Edwards X-ray machine.